Welcome back, one and all, to Mudstomp's speedrun attempts to get a PB at this point. I'm still working on that, so yeah, here's another episode of having a look at a few different attempts I've made. So, skipping over attempt number 18, as that was basically a failure and I ended up resetting very quickly with little to no resources in sight. As you can see, in attempt number 19, we've had a lava pool spawn right next to spawn. So this is amazing. I'm pretty amped at this point because I'm like, great, all I need is a few iron and I'm on my way. So I spend the next couple of minutes gathering different resources, iron, food, etc, etc. And let us jump forward to when I get to building my nether portal. So having gathered all the resources, we are now returning to the lava pit. And boy, does it look pretty. I gotta say, I'm getting more and more excited every time I do one of these and I find a lava pit. It's just, I don't know what it is. I'm getting excited. It's enjoyable, I will say at the least. And in such a few number of runs, I'm finding that I'm getting quicker and quicker at doing certain tasks. So if you're ever thinking of speedrunning yourself, but you think you're never going to have the skills to do it, I honestly suggest just doing it. Because the more you do it, the more you just suddenly start doing things a little bit quicker, a little bit differently, and it just gets more and more enjoyable as you go along, except for obviously the failures, because when you have a good run going and it fails, it's so depressing, I find. But anyway, as you can see here, I'm getting to work on getting some iron cooked, getting some food cooked, so I'm ready to enter the the nether. Basically, I'm still in this mindset that I'm not rushing too much to get into the nether without being 100% certain I've got all resources that I need to have available. Okay, so yeah, this really bugged me. I couldn't understand why this kept happening in the sense that the cobble got in there quicker than the water did. So that's really weird. I've never seen that happen again, or before, I should say. But anyway, I just kept going with it just to get this portal done. My biggest problem with this scenario right here is something that I would never ever do again, is that I built the portal out into the middle of the lava lake, so to speak, and what I realised later as I did this, I don't know why the heck I put it in this position. It's just been the worst position to pick. But there's no safety barrier for overflow scenarios. And in particular, what we'll notice in a second is that I've put the block, that single block there, I've put that correctly for once, because normally I muff it up and put it in the wrong spot. But my biggest problem is that the water hits it and then flows over it and does that. And this is like the 5th portal in a row I've muffed up like this, and it's just like, I couldn't believe it. I'm about ready to quit here, but I thought, no, I'll try and see how I go with it. But what I would suggest to you, if you're ever trying this, is to make sure you put 2 blocks stacked high on the outside of that single block, just towards where I am now, or to have at least one more hole on the outside of that block so that the water can run into that hole, because otherwise you will get this mistake happening again. So I'm learning a lot about overflow on portals, to be honest, at this point, and it's just like, yeah, it's been frustrating, but to be honest, it's just, I think it's part and parcel of the territory. You've got to learn how to deal with all the different things, and yeah, I get there. So anyway, like I said, I decided I'm still going to try this out. I know that it's very unlikely to find lava underneath often, but I thought I'd try it this time just in case, because if I do get lucky, there's enough lava under here and I can finish it off. And because it's been a reasonable run, I say reasonable, I'm about, I think it was 8 minutes into the run or something at this point, so it's not the fastest of runs by far, but for me, that's still a reasonable time for getting inside of a portal. So yeah, I did this, and fortunately I found enough lava to get there and get it all done. And so yeah, my lesson from this one is to just make sure that you've got plenty of the right holes and the right blocks to make sure you don't get this overflowing issue. So yeah, the other thing being, make sure you're aiming when you put your lava down. So that was another almost fatal catastrophe in that sense. Not that it would have been totally fatal, although with the lava coming down, it would have killed everything around probably. So yeah. The final thing I do here is I grab one more lava bucket before I head in because of hoglins. I'm still working on that strat for killing hoglins with lava buckets, but you know, it's at least a thought. So anyway, I grab the rest of my resources, food's cooked, iron's ready to go, so I can an iron pickaxe when I get in, and I head into the nether, and let's see what we find out from there. Well, nether looked alright. A couple of minutes of wandering around, and I hadn't found much so far. But unfortunately, the main problem I ran into here was that I didn't find any gold, and I angered a piglin straight away, basically. And really, I'd gone too far in the nether to really recover from this, and so this ends up being a wipe in a second as well. So, that being said, I'll let that run out, and we'll get on to the next attempt, one that's a little bit more favourable. Alrighty, so this is attempt number 20, everybody. We've had a slow start on this one. You're joining me now about 20 minutes into the run, so it's been an incredibly slow start. But I have gotten a heck of a lot of resources and crossing a few parts of desert and so forth. I'm not actually that far from spawn, but I found my lava lake. So I'm kind of excited at this point when I'm doing the run because I'm thinking, okay, it's been a long start to the run, but I have the bits and pieces that I need, and I'm ready to go. So once again, we're at the portal design phase. This is just one of those things where I'm really starting to think like I've got to get one correct at this point because otherwise I'm going to just shoot myself. But anyway, as you can see, I got the lava underneath the portal with the water, so that was really cool too. So that means I don't have to do the bottom of the portal. And I spend a few moments here trying to set up the blocks and making sure I've got the correct placement and so forth. Now, again, I'm still up in the air over this block placement because that single block I've now shifted out one compared to the last one, and I'm still not 100% certain where it's supposed to be. I've got to go and have a look, but this is why then I put it back again because I'm sure that it's supposed to be that one block away, and in fact that's the case. I'm quite positive on it now. I've checked it again. You can see I really don't want to flood the lava pool in this run. So as it turns out, this ends up being one of my first successful lava pool runs, and I don't know if I end up needing that hole over there. I think I used it for the running off the block. Like I said before, you need to have that either 2 blocks up there so it runs forward, or you need to have a hole on that side. So I think the hole ended up being the saving grace for me in this one, so I was really happy about that. So you can see it's going quite well. I don't know what happened there either. I have a lot of lag issues so often. I think that's the biggest problem I have, but you can see there we go. Nether portal in a few seconds. Unbeknownst to me, that was possible for me. So anyway, that was exciting. So we get straight into the nether here. I'm going to jump forward a second in a bit because I do spend a little bit of time plodding around in here in this nether, but as it turns out, this nether actually ended up being quite a good spawn for me. It took me a few moments to find stuff and whatnot, but number one, I got my gold straight away, so I was able to put on a pair of boots. Number two, though, I found a fortress very quickly and got into attacking a blaze spawner. So yeah, let's jump forward to some of that. So, 15 minutes along, and I've gotten almost all of my blaze rods, but I've had 2 deaths in the process, hence why you can see I'm running back with no gear whatsoever at this point. So, this has been a rather interesting moment for me. And there's the 3rd death. So, recovering from the 3rd death, collecting all my gear, I've got about 6 or 7 blaze rods, and I want to get to 8 just to make sure I'm definitely ready for whatever comes in far as ender pearls and so forth. So, I get my final spawn of blazes and grab the rods that I need. Again, almost dying. I'm running for safety here, but this is when I pick up and the fact I've got 8 rods and it's time to move on. So, getting out of the fortress took me a little while, but eventually I found myself in a warped forest, and that's where things, let's say, continued for now. So here we are in the warped forest about 10 to 12 minutes later. It took me a while to find my way out of the fortress, and then I wandered around in the Crimson let me say that again, the Crimson Forest for a little while, and finally found this warped forest. Now I've got taken to basically thinking that I will hunt Endermen in warped forest if I find them and I can't find a bastion, just as a quick way of getting pearls. Unfortunately, so far they haven't been the most cooperative. I typically find that the drop rate's still horrendous, obviously, so that's one problem. Secondly, I often find they disappear as soon as I go to look at them and whatnot. Or on the other side of things, this happens. So, that was that run dead. Let's move on. It just wasn't worth recovering from here, unfortunately. Into run 21, we find ourselves about 5 or 10 minutes in here now, and I've gotten most of the resources that I could want except for food. But as you can see, a very healthy supply of iron. Now, why am I gathering this much iron? It just happened to be. I turned out in a very shallow ravine near spawn, and it had a lot of iron in it, and just in the process of trying to gather bits and pieces of everything, I ended up with that much iron, and I figured, well, I can always use it for armor and so forth. I have been getting a little bit more confident with going into caves looking for things, so this is where you can see that I'm not really reacting to the creeper too much and just trying to get my way out. So with enough coal, enough iron, cobble, all the rest of it, I decide let's head out, try and get some food and get along our way. And shortly, just over the rise, just into a desert. So I think, sorry, just before I get to that, I think I spent about 5 or 10 minutes gathering food, gathering wood, so that I've got ready for the beds and all that, and cooking the iron and food that I have so far. And then I head into the desert and find a lava pit just on the other side of a mountain. So yeah, then I'm back into the nether again. So I'm feeling like these runs are sometimes longer, but still sort of much more productive than they used to be. So it's going well. So here we are at that lava pit that I discovered, and again I'm looking to see how well I go with this one. It's the kind of thing I'm actually sort of I don't know, I'm going to stop showing these eventually, obviously, because I'll be looking to make sure that I'm actually doing them correctly, and you're no longer having to learn from my failures, as it would be. But I think I'm going to keep showing them until I've covered every type of failure you can possibly imagine with building a portal, and then hopefully by that stage I'll be an expert, and then it's no longer going to be an issue anymore if I fail at what I'm doing. So anyway, this one I picked a really bad spot for this, to be honest. I'm looking around trying to make the right holes and all the fall spots and so on and so forth. I dug down underneath, which I shouldn't have bothered doing in the first place, but that muffed me up to begin with. And then this was the other one, because it went off to the right. I didn't do that extra hole or anything off to the right, and so it floated around and completely took all the lava away and so on and so forth. So yeah, I had to basically go at this all over again. I don't know. Yeah, honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. It's just another fail on a portal in the life of Mudstomp trying to speedrun Minecraft. So what are you going to do? So anyway, I'm still not... Yeah, I'll get there. Anyway, so we're getting through this portal, we get into the nether, and let's jump forward to some success over there, I think, because this is definitely not what we're paying to see, as it were. But anyway, I get it fixed eventually, and into the nether I go. So, in the nether, I get inside the portal, and I see gold straight away, and learning from prior mistakes, I'm like, I'm going to get that gold immediately. The only problem is it's not so much, one piece. So anyway, I turn around and wow, there's a bastion. This is the closest I've ever spawned to a bastion from a nether portal. So I am literally amped at this point. Even though we're in a soul sand valley, which is like to the max, at least it's a bastion nearby. Now, I spend a few minutes going around this trying to figure out what I'm doing with it, pretty much, mainly because I can't recognize what type it is. I'm still learning all the bastion types and so forth, so it's a bit of a touch and go in that sense. What I do find out later, and this is much after the run, is that this was a stables, and I've decided that the stables is my least favorite bastion type. The main reason being is that there's hoglins there. So I think I've gone about this completely wrong, to be honest. So if you're ever in this situation, just for your own information, your best bet is to look around as much as possible, not to go over the top and start digging in or looking around inside the bastion. The reason why I suggest you go around is because by going around, you will see what type it is more readily than what I did here. So this was a major mistake on my part. Not to mention, I'm not wearing gold. I don't have any gold to chuck anywhere. So this is like monumentally stupid at this point. Anyway, I finally managed to get my way around inside of here and figure a few things out. But my major problem is that I end up having death after death after death because of the fact that I'm not prepared with enough gold and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump forward a little bit to another spot here, and we're just going to have a look at how I handled sort of towards the end of this. But my advice to you would be that if this happens to you, number one, make sure you get some gold or know where you're entering so you can get to the gold quickly, and number two, to make sure that you actually know what type you're dealing with. So, returning after 2 deaths, I spent a few minutes re-gearing in the ravine again so that I would be more resistant to death, and decided that this was going to be it. This was going to be the last chance to get in here, mainly because my gear's lying around on the floor from that first death. I've got to get in there and try and get to that gear and make sure that I can get through. Fortunately, I noticed that I've got gold sitting here for this one, so I'm really working towards having a piece of gold on so that the piglins are not going to kill me this time at least. It seems a bit ridiculous at this point, but at the same time I figure if I can at least survive the piglins, I should be right to go. So, gold equipped, I'm ready to go in and continue on this stables, and my hope is that I can make it through enough to get to a proper gold source and get some trading happening. So, I head in, and my main aim here is to avoid running into hoglins for the most part, and to make sure I get down to where all my gear is, because I've got all the gear I need, including the iron pickaxe again, although I've got an iron pickaxe on me. But my point being is that's the bulk of my gear, and I should be right to go if I can get that stuff. So I meandered through this section of the stables in the hope that I can get through, dropping down further than I should. I didn't have any food on me, I might mention at this point, because all my food's on the floor. That's the main reason why I was heading back over there, is to get to my food. So I felt pretty safe at this point. I'm ready to go, and there's a damn skeleton, and that ended this run. And that was when I'm like, no more, that run's dead. So moving on to another run. Moving into trial number 24, I believe it is. We're coming in about 20 minutes into this run. It was an ocean spawn, and I didn't find much to begin with, to be honest, and eventually I found a pirate ship, looted a treasure map, went and found the loot from there, and that's how I got this diamond pickaxe. I then spent a couple of minutes moving around, found a ravine, and went diving into the ravine in the hope of lava being there. There was nothing. Then I thought I'll dig down below it, maybe I'll get lucky, there'll be a lava pool underneath or something, and a few blocks down I hit bedrock, so I dug across for a while, thinking, oh, I'll just dig across, I'm bound to find lava eventually. Finding nothing, I eventually gave up on that as well, and came back out right where my boat was that I went into the ravine, and then continued boating. And from that, I ended up here at this portal. So, given that it had the 2 gold blocks, I was actually quite excited, because I'm like, okay, great, so we've got a portal here. Now all we need to do is complete this portal, and then I can get into the nether in relatively slow motion, 25 minutes into the run or so. But yeah, I mean, I thought it's at least an attempt. I will say, as a side note at this point, I'm starting to get more used to that when I know I've got an ocean spawn, or I think I'm going to end up on water or whatever, I spend a lot more time getting more wood so that I can build doors and a boat straight away. I'm getting that into my habit a bit more as well. So that's something else I've been thinking more and more about. But yeah, so it's developing a little bit in that way. Again, this is nothing to be thought of as like a quick run or anything like that, but it's to get my PB, my first proper completed run as a PB. So again, I'm practicing strategies, feel like I'm making progress and so forth, so that's good. Now, obviously the big problem here is I'm still looking for one piece of lava, and at the end of this episode there's only a couple minutes left, so I'm basically decided that I'm just going to let this run out and talk over it, because it's not a particularly long run after this in a lot of ways. But yeah, I basically just, because I've got the diamond pickaxe, I decided to commit to the fact that I can get the extra obsidian blocks and just get into the nether, obviously a lot quicker than moving around and looking for another portal, and so forth. So yeah, it was kind of like, in a sense, I felt like RNG was actually relatively good in this, considering some of the problems I ran into, such as going to a ravine and finding no lava. And as you can see from my inventory, I've got a bit of everything, except not a whole lot of food. But aside from not the whole lot of food, I figure it's not the worst sort of spawn you could, anticipate or whatever. So yeah, I was pretty sort of happy with that in that sense. Again, it's sort of, I mean, these strategies I'm using right here, right now, are not the best strategies, I don't think. And it's the sort of thing where I think, yeah, you could definitely do a lot to improve the scenario. But anyway, at least I managed to get into the nether in a few moments' time. Sealing the water out was obviously one of the biggest issues. I'm still going to have a think about if there's a better way to do this, and I can't really think of it, to be honest. My best thought is to actually, normally you'd have doors down and blocks and things like that, but it was already full of water, so I don't think there's much else you can do other than fill it up. So anyway, gravel was probably the best way to go. Anyway, getting into the nether, we get into the scenario that's playing out, so I'll let you see that as it goes. But just before we get to the end of the episode, just want to say again, thanks everyone for watching these, if you're watching them. I do ask, leave a like, a subscribe, leave a comment if you want, and keep me encouraged. And I'll keep working at it. You can see here I'm getting the gold ready to go in case I run into a piglin, and that ends up being the big flaw here. I'm getting all prepared. I'm so in the motion. I've not thought of A, creating gold armor for starters. I don't know why, when I'm so like I need to be worried about piglins. And then B, in a second, I run into a piglin and I forget completely to throw the gold on the ground. So this is where, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just one of those things. It was late at night. I'd done a few runs and my brain was just fried at this point. So I'm not thinking straight at all, when I could have just dropped a piece of gold and dug in a hole. So anyway, that was that run. So hopefully you've enjoyed this so far, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Again, leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to keep me going. Till then, Mudstomp out.